Hello. So I'm having to do this at home, and this will be the third time. So I think it's going to work now. Let's hope. Fingers crossed. So this month, the video, rather than being on a live Zoom or at the training center, I decided, and then the girls gave me permission to do a recording because there's just been so much going on. However, this recording has taken up 3 days, so it even put me further behind. But here we go. And the next time I say, well, we'll just do a recording this month, say, Jennifer, remember what happened? And actually, this had happened. I'd done this one time before with a brain training. It happened then too. This is just not the way. This is not the right way. So we are doing this training on communication. This was supposed to be a training about literacy, early literacy. But once I started to get into literacy and communication, things just kind of led me to this. There is a book. It's called Not Nonviolent Communication. I had bought this book some time ago and sent Melissa a picture of it, told her that I was going to read it, do a training on it. That was about a year ago. So I'm just now getting to that. And really, I had almost really forgotten about it. It was up in my shelf. And it just, in life, sometimes you hear these things in your head and it tells you to do it, do it, do it, or get it, or whatever, drive this way, not that way. And I've always been taught to always listen to that voice. So that is what led us here. So in the whole, the book is just full of so much information. So, like any other trainings I've done based off books, this is more of an outline. There's a lot more detail in the book. This is one of the main parts of it is you have two ways to communicate. You can communicate like a jackal or like a giraffe, and we're going to see why he calls it that. Also, when people, saying nonviolent communication, that's why I left it out in the title. People are like, well, violence is, hitting and beating. But the way that the author looks at it is violence is just acting in a way that results in the hurt or the harm, whether it be emotionally or physically. Um, so and most, a lot of the times when we communicate, we hurt people, or I know I do. And this is just another way to make our communication healthier. Now, it has to, you know, when we're talking about real world, you are not going to be able to walk around and talk like this all the time. But the point is, in life, we need growth. That's why we are here, is to grow and become better people. And this is a part of that. In our I always say, yes, I want things to be the way the Democrats want them to be, but it's like a fantasy world. So in a fantasy world, this is how you would want everyone to talk. And I have been trying it. And what happens, like what happened let's see, was it last night? Ella was demanding to do her Valentine's Day cards, and I had so much to do. I just gotten home from work. She had homework, bath. Y'all know how it goes. Dinner, the house was a tornado, clothes needed to be washed. And I said to her, I'm going to do this for you. but I'm frustrated about it, and I'm not able to get anything done because of you. And then reflecting on that statement, the truth is that she asked me to do these things that she thought was important. I was too weak. I felt weak and said, absolutely, I'll do it, but I've got this and this to do. So, what I should have said is, you've asked me to do this. I did it because I felt weak and like I couldn't say no to you. And I put myself now in a bad position where I'm rushing. So that's the whole point of it. But it's hard for sure. Anything that we do has to be a habit. This training means nothing without practice. There are three parts of a habit. And the first part that we have to do is the reminder. Remind yourself, tell Alexis or Siri. She probably just woke up, you know, to remind you to use this kind of communication every morning at 8 a.m., say, and then try it for your first three talks, three conversations. You have to remind yourself because we live in a busy world. So that's the first part. Second part is actually the routine, doing it as you're fixing to learn how to do it. And then the third part is you have to get positive feedback from it. So if, it brings a negative reaction, the only way that you can keep on with it is if you reward yourself. I'm going to do after every conversation I have and I use the right language, this is what I'm going to do for myself. Um, Speaking of that, looking at habit formation, I decided to look into it a little bit more because I've always said 21 days. Well, a habit can start for some people at around 18 days, I think. And then it only goes up or goes down from there. So, what this chart is showing, the green is showing if you do it 4 times a week or more, you're going to retain a lot more for a lot longer. If you were to do it once a day, doing it 7 days a week, then it's going to go even higher than the strength of 3.5. It's going to be a lot higher. Then also, if you look at how long that it will last, or how long you actually need to do it, you'll see at 21 days, you're okay. But if you're not doing it every single day, all the way up to 6 weeks straight, then you fall off tremendously, as you see in the orange. So, all of that to say this little story, the author talks about a man who wanted to do this. He wanted to change things in his life. And so he made a cheat sheet of this stuff and he carried it around with him for 3 weeks. He would take sometimes a long time to respond because he needed to think through it, but people knew what he, in his regular relationships, people he knew, he told them so they would be patient with him when he looked at his cheat sheet and responded correctly. After 3 weeks, he was doing okay, but he started to lose it. And his son said to him, Dad, please just go get your sheet again, your little cheat sheet. You were so much cooler and better when you used that communication. So he got his cheat sheet back out for 3 more weeks and did it for 6 weeks. So, another thing we have to do besides make it a habit is knock down our walls and open our mind, because this is not something where you were born to have this much empathy. You have to learn and train yourself to be empathetic as this. There are a lot of ways, some of us, all of us, have these 12 defense mechanisms, really, one, two, sometimes all of them. Why? And this is the reason why it protects us. Remember all the brain training we've done? Well, that's survival skills, is to block certain things out. What this is doing is overriding some of that stuff. So you don't have all these walls up and are rude to people and give out hate instead of love. This is more for, people who've went through traumatic stuff in their life, or even, being shamed as a child in very slight ways, Um, so there's compensation. That is when you will compensate for a negative thing that you think about yourself. So say, you feel like you don't have a pretty face, but you like your body, then you would be wearing, revealing clothing to try to compensate for what you felt your face looked like. There's denial, just straight out refusing to believe something. Um, I know we all know people like that. Displacement. I'm guilty of this. If someone makes me mad that I'm not attached to or close to, I will come home and, it'll fall on everyone else. And it's definitely something I need to work on. But that's the key, is knowing and recognizing that you do this. Then you can work on it. Otherwise, you just go through life in a false sense. Introjection, projection. I'm not going to go through all of them. I suggest taking a picture. One thing I do is I do identification. I will, if, let's see, like for instance, if this training were to mess up again, and and it's like, okay, this is my fourth time. No, I would say, well, it's okay. It was just God's way of saying I don't need to do the training, or say my child has a bad report card. Well, it's okay. It's all about, I always find the positive in everything. Sometimes I can, that can be bad. You forget all the negative things that people do to you and you just keep on looking at things in a positive light. That's actually a defense mechanism that I have built throughout my life to remain happy and try to hide from something. So if you come over here to overcoming these defense mechanisms, as I said, you have to admit, you got to be open-minded. I mean, we are on earth to grow. And so open your mind and say, yeah, I think I do that and that. And then that's when you need to challenge yourself. I'm going to change this. I'm going to override this trauma or override this, the way I was raised, and I'm going to seek out help and I'm going to practice doing these things. And this is something you can practice, is this communication. Before we get into, sorry, before we get into the actual presentation of the book, I want to cover this. And the reason being is this is kind of what led me to everything. So, have you ever heard everything we judge in others is something within ourselves we do not want to face? Have you ever heard, I recognize that my judgments of others often reflect my own insecurities, right? So I've always believed that, but even more now, like if A kid's being bullied at school. Well, it's the bully that has the issues and it's projecting onto him. So that what we're looking at is the law of projection. And man, it really, at first I was like, I don't know if I can get on board with that. But then I started thinking about it in my life, and by golly, it definitely resonated with me, and I believe in it. It's the concept that what we project onto another person is only something within ourselves that's not resolved. So I thought of the things that really frustrate me. Now I'm not talking about like in the book they say think about a president that you dislike. Well, I don't really feel passionate about any president. So I thought about more of my parenting and my marriage. So one thing I get very frustrated at my husband with is the spending money versus saving money. And he wants to save everything. He doesn't want to waste a dime. Well, there's nothing really negative about that. I want my kids to have, I want myself to have, I want our home to be perfect. And the true problem, after I thought about it, is in me because see, I spend, spend, spend. I will not ever save. I just, and I'll say life is short. We need to spend it. I would love to not have that urge. I would give anything to have a huge savings account. So the real issue is I want him to conform to my way, whether it's good or bad, because it's what I want. Another one I didn't put on there is I have a hard time with needy people. I don't like people being babies. I don't like anyone who's needy. It's not that I don't like them, they just irk me. Thinking about that, when I was raised, I was taught definitely that neediness is weak, that spouting out your problems to people is annoying. No one wants to hear it. And that was a huge part. Did I want to be needy sometimes? Absolutely. But now it is my belief that neediness and crying and talking about your problems, that's negative. Although I'm trying to get you guys to do that with children, by golly, when you get an adult, you better dry it up. It was my issue. Well, we're going to do this. I want you to have some paper out. And I was going to ask you guys to pause and do it, but I think you need to get out your paper, and you may choose to pause it after we go over it, or you may choose to go on and at the end of the video do all three of the exercises that I give you to do to try to give you more time for the training. So this is you thinking of any issue in which you disagree so much with someone on a subject or a person that it like literally makes you frustrated, ears turn red, blood pressure goes up. Think about those things, all right, and write them down, or take a picture of this and do it after the training. So throughout this week, I want you to take those things in the weekend and try to think back in your life and see, was this something you dealt with in childhood? Is this some kind of desire? Say, you really wanted to be a gymnast or a musician, and you tried, but you were never able to do that. Do you look down on a certain type of person because you really wanted that trait? Um, Alcoholics, how do you look at addiction? Is it to you a chemical imbalance and in a true biological diagnosis, or is it you can control that? Same things for different genders and all of that. Is where is that coming from? And the whole thing is, it's not a question of whether it's morally wrong according to your beliefs. It's that it bothers you to the point someone else's statement or someone else's way of living is bothering you so badly that it's affecting your health, and it takes up time and energy in your life, and you spend time hating. That's the problem, because you will not change anybody, right, by telling them their faults. So why are you spending all this energy to hate this person? That's what we're looking at here. That's what we're trying to get going. Not a question of if someone is very, very lazy, they shouldn't be or they should be. It's the question that their laziness bothers you to this degree. Then it falls on you. It's your issue. So you can either pause this training right now and think of these things, or you can wait till the end. So, according to the author, there are two forms of communication. As we mentioned, there's jackal and there's giraffe. Giraffe is the animal with the biggest heart. And that's why this love language, this nonviolent communication, is called giraffe communication. Whereas the jackal is considered to be evil in the Bible, that, it's a calculating and devious, if not the most calculating and devious animal in the animal kingdom. So today, when we stop the recording, the goal is for you to be a little more of a giraffe. So this is language. Jackal language is language of the head. All right. Giraffe, language of the heart. In our culture, we are a culture of guilting and controlling and forcing things. It's just how it has built and become. We feel like controlling things and taking away choice is the only way to do it. Well, I don't know. I see that more and more every day. Someone is not going to truly grow and change if they are being forced. Typically, they just rebel against it. But if they choose it and you suggest and they choose, that's when true change occurs. So it's a battle of who's right, who's wrong. It's those conversations where somebody's trying to up somebody constantly. The conversations where people are talking over each other. That is what we're talking about here. Forcing, this is one. And I've done this, even though I know from a long time ago, I didn't know a lot about it, but I knew that telling kids, you got to say you're sorry, really had no point. Like they didn't understand the concept. They didn't really truly believe it. But this looks at it a little more. When you do force children to say they're sorry for things that they are not sorry for, okay, all it's doing is teaching them that what they are doing, the act they're doing, and the feeling or word sorry doesn't match up. So it's almost teaching them to not be true. When they do say they're sorry, really it's giving them a message that, hey, this word, you can just say sorry and then just go about do whatever else. And that's typically what happens, right? When we make them say they're sorry, typically they don't stop that behavior unless you're trying to scare the kids. Now that, y'all know how I feel about that. Trying to control children with fear and scare them. You do not want your children scared of you. I've heard some of y'all say that before. And guys, that's just, man, that's disturbing. And you really need to get up inside yourself. Really. Um, mm, that's hurting. That's hurting kids. So, also, we teach them by doing that, we teach them you don't have to take responsibility for your actions, because what you do is you're doing it for them. You give them a magic word, they go over here and say, I'm sorry, and all is fine. So rather than, a kid grabs and steals a toy from another kid, rather than saying, tell him you're sorry and give that toy back, you got to teach them what to do, not just say this word. So, hey, you hurt him when you took that toy from him like that. So, what can you do to make it better? How can you do an act of kindness to make it better? That is a better way of dealing with that kind of thing, not just tell them you're sorry. Then it's also including that they made me do it language. Like, well, the reason I'm late is I got pulled over by a police car because I was speeding. Well, it's the policeman's fault. Judging language, he talks too much, so I couldn't concentrate. She wears too much makeup, so she's ugly. That kind of thing. We'll look at those in more detail. Giraffe language is a language of the heart, it's a language of choice. Everyone pays for it when we do things out of fear, guilt, duty, and reward, rather than doing it by choice and given from your heart. You know, if if you give because you're forced to give, does that morally put you higher in being like Jesus? No. If we're forcing it, it's just not real. It's giraffe language is no blame. It's ridding others of responsibility and taking responsibility for yourself. So that way you grow morally. You never make a judgment of them in a feeling sentence. So I feel hurt because you are not listening. I feel hurt because I do not feel heard, is how you would say that. So it's not demeaning that person. You're not listening. It's, I don't feel heard. It's your thing. If you don't get it yet, you're gonna get it. So what about this one? I'm angry because of you. So that's judging them, belittling them, making them mad. And guess what? Once you start judging somebody like that, or they feel like they're to blame, there is no getting through. I'm angry because of you, versus what you should say, I'm angry because I had the problem of expecting you to clean the house today. So were they wrong for not cleaning the house? Morally, that's not for us to even judge. It is that what's for us to think about is our expectations. They are making us mad because we expected more of them. Are they even capable of, giving more? Do you need to move away from that so you can grow in life and find people who are more like you? When you say intimidating and manipulating and controlling things, or you say those words, intimidate, manipulate, control, I feel like you're controlling me. I feel like you're manipulating. I feel like you're intimidating. They stop listening. They only hear you calling them these things, and that's it. You're done after that. So rather than, intimidate, it would be, I feel scared, not you're intimidating. It would be, I feel weak, not you manipulated me. You felt weak, like I talked about with Ella. I feel worthless. instead of controlled, or I feel like I have no power instead of you're controlling. So there are 3 things that stop giraffe language. These 3 things, if you can get rid of them, then you're moving in the right direction. There is moralistic judgment. That is going to be phrases like, your problem is you are violent, where instead with compassion, you would say, I'm scared of violence. You are too loud when you talk. Instead, my ears are sensitive. You are racist. Instead, you describe what they did. I felt uncomfortable when you walked into the room and you wouldn't speak with anyone except for the 3 people that have your same skin color. That kind of thing. Then also making comparisons, that stops giraffe language. Just don't do it. Comparisons destroy, they never help. And then the third thing will be denial. And we have talked about that. I started smoking because my mom and my dad smoked. So that's why. No, I chose to smoke. It has nothing to do with mom and dad. I'm late because I got a ticket for speeding. No, I'm late because I was speeding. So the process takes lots of courage. The more you empathize in life, the easier and faster the problem is going to be solved. And the higher the more you will become like the perfect man, the only perfect man that ever lived as far as we know. And that is Jesus. And if you will do these things and empathize more, you're becoming closer to him. Because let me tell you, pretty sure he didn't go to people and say, oh, you stink. He would have said, oh, my nose is very sensitive, right? So the steps are, we're going to go through these steps. Is observe, do not evaluate, identify a feeling or express a feeling, take responsibility for the feeling, and then we respond or make our request, which would be our need. Conversation is really to satisfy a need. So the observe versus evaluating is also very helpful for you people who are doing NECPA observations right now. As an observer of a bunch of years, I can tell you an observation is not valid unless it is what you can see in front of you. It can't be a feeling. It cannot be anything subjective. It ruins the whole observation. So being an observer without being an evaluator is the highest form of intelligence. And you want to be there. Here I am. Hello. I am what you label me. I've never seen a lazy man. I've seen a man who never ran while I watched him, and I've seen a man who sometimes slept between lunch and dinner, and who would stay at home upon a rainy day, but he was not a lazy man. Before you call me crazy, think, was he a lazy man, or did he just do things that we label lazy? So are those things about him good or bad? Not our problem. That's his own problem. When you are labeling something, it just doesn't work. It's going to be, if you go into a classroom and you say the teacher seemed irritated, so the kids were being bad, rip it up, throw it out. The teacher's voice was high pitched, and she was breathing very heavily. That's what you say. Like DCS reports, they will not accept something that is not all objective. So let us practice that. And I use these names because I don't want to offend anybody who might be watching this video. And so I don't want to make up names because that might be one of your names. So I just use my family. I use the parts of my family that don't get offended if they're judged. Jennifer Ladd is ugly. Jennifer's features do not appeal to me, is the way you would say that. That kid has problems. But instead, you would say, the child cannot process what I'm saying and uses his body to express anger by hitting. You never do it my way. The last 3 times we have done something, it has been what you requested. That's how you would get your point across, because then they don't feel judged. Britton and Kennedy are messy and they have bugs in their room, probably. I never observed that. I have not seen Kennedy or Britton pick up the garbage in their rooms, and I cannot walk through them. White people are judgmental. In my experience, when I have spoken with Caucasians, the majority of them talk negatively about other races. Ella is scared of everything. Instead, Ella does not like to be around dogs, and she does not like to be in the dark. Bowden is smarter than any kid I know. Bowden talks with me about complex things and solves problems with the scientific method. Maybe. The second step is identifying and expressing your feelings. Expressing your vulnerability will resolve conflict faster than anything else. Try it. See what results you get. The English language has really taught us to say, I feel, but then not have a feeling word after that. I feel I got a bad deal. And rather than that, you would say, I feel frustrated. I paid a lot for that item and it has already fallen apart. Words that we feel that put others on the defense, you've probably learned a lot and picked up on a lot of them by now, but those words would be things like abandoned, I feel bullied, distrusted, misunderstood, manipulated, unheard. Using words that describe what others are doing or what we think they or we are rather than how we feel. That's the mistake. So rather than saying, if I would say to Melissa, I feel abandoned, Melissa, how would that make you feel? Rather than you could say, Melissa, I felt lonely when you left. Going to say, Melanie, I feel like you bullied me on the bus. Well, right then she says, oh my gosh, she just called me a bully. But I could have said, when you said my body was FAT, in my house, I don't allow my kids to really say that word. So I feel like I have to spell it. I felt threatened. So you can address it without labeling them, because then conversations never work. You guys can take a picture and print this. This is a great resource to learn more feelings that we have, because you have to have these words in your vocabulary. Yes, there's a reason we have to teach feeling words. And that's what I'm saying. These things that the state requests, it all comes from research. And this book is full of research. And then they say, oh, well, we need to teach feeling words. We need to know them too, so we don't use things like bullied. And just take a snapshot if you want. The third step is taking responsibility for our feelings. So in a conversation, you have a stimulus and then you have a cause. Stimulus is what is happening, what triggered it. And the cause, of course, is the stuff, the real deep down meaning. So with the prisoner story that was put into the book, he Marshall, who's the author, was working with a prisoner, and he was so angry because he had sent something into the parole board or the pardons, and they didn't respond when he thought they would. So he was so mad. And they went through this process of, why are you really mad? Well, I'm mad because they didn't respond. And Marshall brings up, what you're mad about is that you expected them to respond the next day. That is the problem, was your expectations. And I think we really have to watch that too in the classroom. The expectations that you guys have for these children are typically the reason you end up upset and screaming at them, because we have got to learn 5-10 minutes tops for things that they don't like to do. If you're expecting a kid to sit down at that table or sit in your circle time and listen for more than 10 minutes at the most, or clean up a mess for more than 10 minutes at the most, that is developmentally appropriate. So then if you start yelling at them when they are not listening to you anymore, or they are, you feel like that's being disrespectful to you, but it's not. It's really the other way around, because your expectations are just not lined up with what their brain is currently at and where it's developed. So keep that in mind. I want all of us to really, really focus on that, on our expectations for these kids. Okay. So the stimulus for that prisoner story was no response. The cause was the expectations. If you are very angry at a kid and you're showing it, you send him to sit to timeout. Typically the stimulus is that your expectation was that they sat at circle time for 25 minutes or doing your dittos for 25 minutes. The cause of it is your expectation. The stimulus is them getting bored and getting up. Our needs will never be met by telling someone what is wrong with them. So you don't listen. That is totally the wrong way to go about it. You feel frustrated because, no, you feel unimportant because you feel like you're not being heard. A lot of times with these kids, they also stop wanting to meet our needs as soon as they feel blamed. We are looking at a graph here that tells you exactly why you have behaviors in your room 90% of the time. Sometimes children really do have issues, but most of the time, we just haven't learned enough. The real root of anger is our needs not being fulfilled. I'm angry because my need was not met. So now the number 4 piece, our responses and the request to fill our need. All right, let's get our needs met so we don't get upset, guys. If you come at somebody with a feeling only, so say Andrea and I are in my office working on a bunch of things for the classroom, and she's talking about a classroom, and I all of a sudden say, I'm bored. What does she take away from that? You bore me. Am I boring? And then if you come at someone with a need only, and I said to her, as she's talking about her classrooms, I'm taking a break. Us doing this project together, I got to get out of here for a while. All she knows is that I need a break. And most of the time, people will think it is because of them. So if you add the feeling and the need together, Andrea, I'm bored. I'm going to have to take a break from this project we're doing together. My mind is, whew, that's clear. It's not her. It's my problem, my mind, the habitual stuff. Just the clearer you are about your needs, even though you feel like you're going to burden somebody, it's 10 times worse if you don't tell them your need. The more likely you're going to get it if you tell them. And that is something, I mean, this training's been great for me. I hear that all the time. Tell me exactly what you need. I don't need 10 more sentences around your need to try to soften it. Just tell me, what do you need? Oh, and when it comes to parents in the classroom, positive, negative, positive, that sandwich is perfect. But when we're dealing with people that are not our customers, get to the point. If you want to be sure you have communicated, though, as you meant to, and you don't know if they took it the wrong way, you can ask them, be like, hey, Andrea, what did you hear me say when I say that? I want to make sure that I'm not bored with you. And then the problem's solved. Be clear, be positive. There are 3 stages of responses. There is a phase that you go through, and it's called emotional slavery. I was stuck in this for a long time, still have a little bit. That's where we feel like we're responsible for others' feelings. We're going to do whatever it takes to make everybody happy. And then what that leads to is the ones we love actually becoming a burden. It's like cooking for your family every night, no matter how busy you are. No one else is expected to cook, but you just do it to keep everybody happy, but you hate it. And then there's a story in there about that. And the kid, after the mom finally says, I'm done cooking, the kid comes to and says, I'm so glad because you were so mad and resentful all the time, Mom, because you were having to do something you hated. Don't worry about it. Cook when you want to, cook when it's your choice, and we'll come up with a plan for everyone else. There's no reason that we shouldn't all pitch in. And it fixed the situation. But then when you do that too much, you get in that obnoxious stage where you're tired of pleasing and you become bitter. It's like the little girl who makes straight A's and always does exactly to make mommy and daddy happy. And then what happens when she leaves? Then she rebels. That's like saying the obnoxious stage, you're like, that's not my problem. You are not my problem anymore. That's when we lose people. And then you have the emotional liberation, which you can achieve. And that is nonviolent communication falls under that type. We know how to meet our needs, but we also don't do it at the expense of others. Relationships flourish. There's no anger, guilt, shame, or anxiety. So we have 4 options on how we can receive and respond to a negative message. So if someone says, you are the most self-centered person I've ever met to me, there's 4 ways I can respond. I can go into I should have been more sensitive. I'm so sorry that you see me like that. Then that person might start feeling guilty. I feel low confidence and am ashamed and embarrassed. Or I could blame others. You have no right to call me self-centered. You're the one who's self-centered. And then y'all know where that goes. Or we could sense our own feelings. When you say that, it makes me feel hurt because I don't feel like you recognize my attempts to help other people. There we go. That conversation's going somewhere. Or you can focus on that other person. Are you feeling hurt because I don't show you that you're important enough? Are you not feeling important now? Because I will work on myself. I love you. That's accepting responsibility. We have to learn how to request rather than demand. When you demand things, and you do it out of coercion and control, the listener is either going to submit to you or rebel. And submitting might be great for the second, or the kid might submit, but in the long run, that changes everything and ends up turning them into the person who will not say yes to anything, or the person that gets ran over in life and will never leave the husband that beats her, or, on and on. We got to make them strong. How do you know if it's a demand? Well, as you've noticed through life, if someone says, "Hey, can you go get me a coffee?" and then you say, "No, I can't do it right now, I'm busy," and then they say, "Fine, you never have time for me," that means it's a demand. But if it's a request and you say, "I don't have time to do it," they're like, "Okay, all right." That means it's actually just a request. No criticism equals no demand. All right, then it looks at group communication, and it talked about two main points. One being how important it is. It's nothing I had ever even thought of, but before you have big meetings, the leaders who are talking, deciding what they want the goal to be. So, what is the goal of this meeting, and what do we want the listeners of the meeting to do? Do we want them to agree? Do we want them to form their own opinions? Do we want, oh, sorry. What do we want? And it ends up, if you don't do that, it ends up causing the fishing, right? And the meetings last for longer, and it's just discussion that doesn't matter, and it ends up getting in the way of the important stuff. Also, as part of the group, you can ask if things aren't going anywhere in a meeting, you can ask, "Hey, what is your goal for this meeting? Are you wanting us to tell you exactly what we feel about it, or are you telling this as a demand?" Then when a group also focuses attention on titles, if you have a company and you are part of like a pyramid, right? You have the top where there's a lot of demand and control coming down. And then the people at the bottom, because they're not getting a choice, and because these people are important up here, but they are not important down here, the mutual respect does not happen. So it just warns that if you are a title-based company and focus on different levels, like a pyramid scheme kind of thing, that's where you will not get empathy. And when someone doesn't have empathy for the people who are running the business, then they don't feel dedicated to do what they need to do to make that person happy and to help that person's business to thrive. So now we're going to be listening. We've covered all the stages, we've covered groups, and now we are looking at what if we are the ones listening and the other person is the observer, feeler, needer, requester, okay? You try to get rid of all of your preconceived notions. This is one. When you come into the classroom every day, you need to throw out all your judgments of kids. I have said this many times before. Don't be the one who says to the therapist, "Oh, she's so bad," right in front of her. Don't be the one that goes to the other teachers, even not in front of the kid, and says, "He's got lots of he's a horrible kid. His behavior is horrible." Because one, self-fulfilling prophecy. And I see it a lot, and you don't know you're doing it. It is a completely unconscious thing that you're doing, but you end up triggering kids because you are waiting for these children to do bad things, so much so that you're not seeing how hard they're trying. And then on the other hand, the good children, they end up just being ignored because you don't think they're ever going to do anything bad. But the problem is children change so much in their development that if we keep thinking that they're the bad kid and we're always watching for them to mess up, we don't allow them to properly grow, develop, and change. We need to be always watching for them to do good things, right? Because positive reinforcement, constantly looking for them doing the right thing so that way you can change those behaviors. Empty your mind and listen with your being. When you are listening, even if you think that you're a good listener, if you're giving advice or if you're relating it to your life, which is completely natural and we all do it, then maybe you're not as good as a listener as you think. So try really hard to just actively listen and then respond. Be with them in their feelings. There's the quote, don't just stand there, do something. Well, this is don't just do something, stand there. Just stand there with them. You don't have to do anything. um just sit with them in their silence. Use appropriate action or touch rather than gabbing, and then they can't get their words out, and then we don't ever get the full feeling. All right. And then so this is there's a section on conflict resolution. In times that this fails, this language, it kind of goes over how to go from there. Let's see. It's the last couple of chapters, I think. Oh there's a significant amount on there. So there's a lot more to this book than what I have presented you with today. Here is a link. You can get it at Target for $10 if you're interested. And the main thing here is just growth. We are not here on earth to hinder children's development. We are not here on earth to make Kennedy feel worse about herself. We are here to grow each other. You are here at Kitty Corner because either you need growth or someone around you needs growth. I believe wholeheartedly that I am here at Kitty Corner. When I called Melissa and said, "Hey, thinking about coming, could I come to work for you?" And she said, "Man, I knew you were going to call." Well, there's a reason that all happened. I needed to be here to grow in some way, and don't hinder. And then there could be some reason that I needed to be here to help someone in the company grow. And when we just throw negative things at people, it stops growth. So just don't mess with the whole plan God's got going on up there, is to put us places where we can grow around people that will support us. Also, I want to add in this. Sorry. we we have to become our best selves. That's the reason we're here. Let's do everything we can before we leave this earth to be the person that we were intended to be through God's creation. It's not accidental. We fill each other in, really. So when you feel that strong connection, like on the bus, Melanie and I have been partners for 3 years. Where she lacks, I have. Where I lack, she has. It's the strength and the weakness, and together we need to be here to help each other, not to beat each other down to make ourselves feel better because we feel bad about ourselves. Like, I lack spending control. Eric lacks letting go and having fun every now and then. We're together to balance those things out. We just got to realize that you know, we need to grow each other. If we decide to walk away out of anger or leave it in anger, we're just leaving a situation that we're going to get put right back in because the problem is not solved. And we just end up delaying our growth. It ends up hurting us. And sometimes we end up just right back where we were. Think about how many people that leave and come back to kitty corner. So now this is how we're going to extend the training to give 2 hours credit. Pause this video, or it's fixing to be the end. And I want you, write down on your paper, think about what you lack, what you need to work on, and what person at your center or wherever has skills that can help you grow. You got to identify it before you can fix it. And then the very last exercise, I want you to write down, I do not like people who are ... and be completely honest with yourself. Nobody's looking at your stuff. And then I need you to write down people that make you really, really mad. Is it, prissy people? Is it grunge musicians? Is it a certain religion? Write it down and try to dig a little deeper to find out what is causing that. Why are you spending energy and blocking love because you can't feel something with love that's already full of irritation and hate? Why are you doing that just because this person is the way they are? That's their problem. And then secondly, what need are you trying to meet? That is what I would like for you guys to do to extend this extend this training. I will also say what you're going to do right now is you have two choices now that you're done with the training. You can send me a picture of the 3 exercises I asked you to do. There was one at the beginning, then there's this exercise, and sorry. Think about what you lack and what person you are doing life with can help you make up for it. Think about people you actively do not like and that bother you, and think about the need inside of you that you're trying to meet that causes you to throw hate at them. And then at the very beginning, you can also choose to pause the training and think of these things and then write them down. The things, any issue that you would disagree with so much with that it may raise your blood pressure, and identify those things. You can take a picture of your notes that you did on those exercises. Then you're going to say, this is Britton Brooks at the Kingston Center. And then I will go into TMPAL or Train TN and give you 2 credit hours in administration. If this stuff is too personal and you don't want to share it with me, I want you to come up with 3 paragraphs, 3 points of what you have learned and how you will use it to grow. and better your current situation. So, one more time, you can get off this training and send me a picture of the 3 exercises that you've done. Or if that's too personal, you can send me 3 things you learned in 3 paragraphs and how you are going to use those things to be a better person. All right. Don't forget to leave me your full name, first and last. I'm Britton Brooks, and your center from Kingston Center, because things have changed in Train TN and I need the location of your center. Thank you so much.